this. Okay, everybody, we are live. I'm Ellis. I'm your host for the DeSci All-Star Hackathon, both the college and the high school edition. And today we have Eleanor Davies joining us. Say hi, Eleanor.
Hi, everyone. Great to meet you, and thank you for joining.
Eleanor's going to give a little background on herself. Super excited for the presentation today. I'm going to hop off, and after everything is done, we will be uploading the workshop recording as well as the slides to the hackathon site and to the Telegram. But with that, Eleanor, I'll just hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alice. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining and for taking the interest in DeSci. I'm Eleanor Davis. I am head of DeSci at the DeSci Foundation. So basically what I'm tasked with doing day to day is sourcing, evaluating DeSci projects to build on the DeSci chain. So DeSci is the fastest parallelized EVM and with NASDAQ-like speed. So you're basically combining the technicalities of Solana with also the mindshare of Ethereum. And so once you abstract the DeFi layer, it's actually really interesting to see, what you can exactly build in scientific applications. So I'll talk about that a little bit today. My background, so I've been in DeSci since 2022. I was in the founding team of LabDAO, basically is co-founder, chief operations. More recently was dual flow steward at VisaDAO. So have built DeSci organizations, built communities, also everything from sourcing strategy to coding to presenting Davos to launching tokens, white papers, regulations, etc., etc. And then prior to Web3, I was working in healthcare and biotech consulting at the Marwood Group, so on the transaction side, working with private equity, and then also in fund operations at OnDeck, so working with startups. So I'm going to share my slides real quick, and super excited to talk about DeSci, what DeSci is about as well. I'm aware that some of you would maybe not know a lot about DeSci, so it can also provide a little bit of an onboarding, and then also talk about why DeSci and also the types of projects that I think would be really great to see built on the chain, and I think also areas of opportunity for real world sticky applications that really do good and also have a really compelling use case of blockchain in the sciences. So basically this is me, I'm Eleanor, I'm head of DeSci at DeSci, and also so encompassed with the DeSci initiative, we also have the fund, which is called Sapien Fund. And for anybody who's also, may already have a DeSci project, you can apply for funding there. So the web address is actually sapienfund.xyz, and the links and everything will be shown later in the presentation as well. So if you're building something in DeSci already, if you know somebody who is working on a DeSci project or also just wants to get in touch, you can apply for funding there. So that's sapienfund.xyz. And I'm going to put that in the comments as well. I'm just seeing that is available. So there we go. So building DeSci. So first off, this is the team. You're probably familiar with that. And, so I think it really is quite bespoke as to what we can build in DeSci on the specific blockchain. I kind of see it as a little bit more, not just venture, but also incubation, venture building as well. So there's also a lot of expertise in the sciences that's already on the team. And we have a great team in order to execute on it. So basically the problem with the existing, virtual machine, and also this is a bit more on DeSci specifically, but it also speaks to the reason as to why DeSci is taking a little bit longer to adopt. And so basically, new blockchains support parallelization, but they also require developers to make significant changes in their code. And I think also it's difficult really to get a good overview on where to build, what to build, which blockchain, and also what the actual technical specifications are too. But so the thing that I really like about Say is that it is EVM compatible, which basically means that you're working with the mindshare of Ethereum. You can also bridge across other chains in the Ethereum ecosystem. And it also means that you can basically really benefit from the mindshare that I think that DeSci, excuse me, I think DeSci really benefits from. It's also a lot cheaper in order to conduct transactions, and this has also been, one of the blockers to onboarding more scientists, key opinion leaders, academics, etc., into crypto, into DeSci, because of the lag time, the cost, just the friction with the onboarding. And I think that Say is actually a really good solution to, I guess, make this more of a possibility. User experience is basically just a lot better. So it's also scalable, NASDAQ level performance. That also means that, for instance, funding research projects is just a lot quicker. It's, you having to spend less on gas fees. There's a 99% transaction success rate. And I think also, it's a real green field for building projects like that DeSci actually requires, without the stigma of like token rug pulls or any kind of, I guess just bad press that crypto has also suffered from. So I think this is also a real advantage as to why you might want to build something in DeSci on Say. We've also achieved exponential growth as well. So we only went live on mainnet in May 2024. So since then, we've achieved very aggressive growth and also really kind of putting our bets in DeSci as well. So this is kind of an overview of stats and also how it compares to other chains. And this is a little bit of an ecosystem map. Naturally, because DeSci is quite a new, nascent field, we're still kind of building this out. And this is also why I'm really excited to present this workshop to everybody who's listening today. So as I mentioned, I've spoken about the core advantages of, Say, the chain, but where do we go from here? So there are a number of chains that are looking at, doubling down on the likes of DePIN, also gaming. I think Hedera is kind of gravitating more towards the likes of gaming, for example. Real world asset tokenization is also super interesting, as well as AI. And I know that many of you who may be tuning into this hackathon may be building in these different areas. I do also think that they are interlinked, however. So for instance, DePIN and DeSci do have quite a bit of overlap, as well as payments and AI as well. I think AI for oh, my voice is not audible. Okay. Hang on a second.
Weird. I can hear you just fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's good to know. Cool. But yeah, I think there is some overlap between these different subsectors, especially AI and drug discovery, and also being able to tap into collective intelligence via DAOs. I think they're super helpful and very interesting to see what sort of new novel discoveries come out of this through decentralized coordination mechanisms, and also the funding component as well. So imagine, AI drug discovery, or AI drug discovery, coupled with tokenizing the IP, and also being able to raise via a decentralized crypto native funding mechanism. Just want to double check that I am audible, because I'm seeing in the chat that somebody's having trouble with hearing me. I guess not. Okay, cool. So anyway, on to DeSci, and I'll talk a little bit about what this is and also what the current DeSci ecosystem is looking like, and also areas of opportunity as well. So DeSci at a high level is the applications of blockchain and crypto in the sciences. And this can take shape in various forms because the science is also a very broad field. And so is crypto, actually. So the first one, which is quite obvious, is funding. So there are BioDAOs, for instance, also IP tokenization protocols as well, which have kind of led the way. No, more cool. Which has kind of led the way for DeSci and how it kind of initially spawned. It kind of dovetails the open science movement, which happened quite a lot earlier. It talks about open research, publishing, not being kind of stonewalled by journals such as Elsevier, The Lancet, etc. And so now we're kind of into a little bit of a second progression from that, such as funding research in a way that's open and also fostering open collaboration. And then there are other types of applications that come after that. So as I mentioned, funding is one, which is basically been leading the way. So BioDAOs are a great example of that. For instance, VitaDAO, which is where I used to work, we're focused on funding and advancing translational research that would traditionally be overlooked by institutions or funders. And so crypto is a really interesting way of providing maybe slightly more risk tolerant capital, but also being able to tap into the likes of patient advocacy groups, friends and family, I guess kind of more retail investors or supporters of a project, and also granting governance rights. So you're kind of benefiting more from the group intelligence over a specific disease area. There was actually a DeSci bull run that happened in December 2024, which is when this ecosystem map was published. And basically what happened is that there was a lot more capital that came into the DeSci space. I believe the overall valuation of the DeSci space in November shot up to, I think it was something like 1.2 billion. There are a couple of articles online that you can also read about that talk about the performance of DeSci and also kind of what happened during the December bull run. So this actually happened after I think it was ETH Thailand, if I'm recalling correctly. So CZ was talking about DeSci and its potential, and everything kind of rallied from there, which is very interesting. We're also seeing a lot more talent and attention that's coming into the space as well, and that also is why I'm excited about building a DeSci V2, which is kind of the applications that will come after this. So there's also ecosystems, which are communities. So you have the likes of, so communities below that. So you have the likes of DeSci London, Orosci is another one, and Vitalia City. So these are in-person communities. There's also publishing. So you have DeSci Labs. There's also DeSci Labs and also Research Hub. I think Brian Armstrong, so he's the founder of Coinbase, is actually a real key figure in kind of bringing DeSci into crypto and kind of making it, I think also legitimizing it and making it accessible as well to researchers. There's obviously, a little bit more degen stuff like memes. And then we also have info and services, research, data, etc. For me, I think data will be the next frontier of DeSci after funding. So I'm very curious to see what you guys will build with this after this hackathon. So DeSci on Say specifically, We recently launched Sapien Ventures, which is, so this is on behalf of the foundation, and exactly on behalf of the foundation, and this is 65 million, which is the largest commitment of capital in DeSci to date. So, this is something that we're taking very, very seriously, and and a industry as well where we think there is a lot of opportunity in terms of not only funding research projects, but also the applications that can be enabled, once we kind of built out a larger ecosystem. And so why DeSci on Say? Well, basically, you're looking at a NASDAQ-like performance with Web3 capabilities. So a lot of the reason as to why DeSci, I think, has not taken off as much is because you're kind of dealing with two polar opposites. So on the one hand, you have the crypto crowd, and then on the other, you have the academic crowd who's quite skeptical, quite sensitive towards reputational risk. And I think, there's a couple of things that have blocked bringing academics into crypto because of the, certain scams, hacks, rug pulls, etc. And that's, been a little bit difficult in order to onboard. However, I think, as I mentioned earlier, with Say, there isn't really this legacy, and I see it as a real opportunity to bring in amazing, legitimate projects that bring real world credibility as well. And so having a NASDAQ-like performance also means that you have a better user experience, so you're not having to pay crazy gas fees in order to process a transaction or work with very large data sets, as well as just a lot faster compared to other blockchains in the market. And you're looking at processing massive data sets, cross-jurisdictional data sharing as well. That's another thing. And also real-time monitoring, response systems. So these are real core tenets in DeSci scientific applications that need to really be, almost rivaling Web 2 applications that Web 3 just hasn't been able to perform at the same standard to. But I think with Say's stack and also expertise on hand support, there's real opportunity in order to start building new applications, new projects, and build out the ecosystem. In terms of foundation level expertise, you have, unlike other blockchains, you have somebody who's specifically dedicated to this vertical. So you've seen the DeFi and the ecosystem sessions, and so there is somebody who has the knowledge, who has the network, and can also support with projects that you don't really have as much of on other chains. And so there is really quite a lot of in-house expertise concerning the applications of blockchain in healthcare, for instance. So our director of infrastructure on the foundation has previously worked with that on an enterprise level, and also led university education programs on blockchain in healthcare as well. We also have a very strong advisor network for the Sapien Fund too. More details on that to come. And dedicated support and dedicated ecosystem to making it thrive. So Sapien Ventures, basically this is our biggest bet on DeSci. And so in terms of, how this could look after, after the hackathon is, I would love to talk to anybody who's looking to build in DeSci and, any project applications. Also just very open to jamming over ideas on what could be potentially interesting, successful, and very, very happy to help there. In terms of check sizes, it's between 50K to 2 million, and typically like to see a little bit of traction, which I think this All-Star Hackathon definitely enables, especially if you're successful with funding. And as I mentioned, there's the venture side, and there's also an element of venture building as well via the Say Labs too. So DeSci V2 specifically is my thesis around, what comes after the bull run, what comes with this influx of capital in the ecosystem. And so for me, it's the frictionless value of money, access to tools and talent in the sciences. So I think value flow is super key, and it's also something that is kind of a little bit difficult to really nail down in crypto and Web3. But I think that we can do this really elegantly on Say. And currently, I feel as though a lot of the theories, ideas, etc., are in a little bit of a bubble. So really, kind of going from theory, which is ideas, to the real world beyond DeSci. So we're looking at sophisticated applications, which I'll talk about in a second, data management and infrastructure via performant tech stack. A couple of projects that come to mind when it comes to data management are the likes of Remedy, which is an enterprise level blockchain enabled company. It also deals with clinical data management, with patient data management from clinical trials across jurisdictions, and they already have a number of enterprise clients that are also using the stack. And this just kind of really speaks to how blockchain can really enhance what's happening in the real world. Infrastructure as well, I think, is particularly interesting. So Amino Chain for me is, I really like what they're doing in the biobanking space. And I also like what Genomes DAO is doing as well. And this kind of goes back to, preserving the integrity of your genomic data and making sure that who accesses your data is done in a transparent way, and it's kind of reshaping the way in which, users users manage their data. So it's just basically a lot more transparent. And it also offers easier onboarding, so it's abstracted away from the stigma in crypto. These are the DeSci V2 pillars. So talk through each of these. There are 5, and you can also, I'm also going to put in the link in the chat about what DeSci V2 is. So this is a blog post that released recently, and this kind of goes a little bit more into the specifics. So I'll keep this high level for today, just for the purposes of those of you who aren't totally familiar with DeSci and need a little bit of onboarding, also a little bit of inspiration as well. So first off is biotech. So this encompasses early stage research, also later stage research and clinical trial optimization. Then infrastructure, which is patient data management, enterprise research data marketplaces, and also hardware, I think. So truth tech is specifically interesting here, which I'll talk about in a second. And also healthcare and consumer tech. So this is a little bit more preventative care orientated, also a little bit more longevity orientated. Also wearables and integration. This kind of feeds a little bit into Brian Johnson's Don't Die movement, which I'll talk about shortly. There's also athletics and entertainment. This is a little bit more inside the crypto bubble. There's a gaming component too, so social networks is quite cool. And then lastly, it's climatology and bioengineering. So I can talk to that in a little bit shortly. So what does biotech look like? And specifically, how can I build something in DeSci that is on the biotech side? So specifically, I think Research Hub is really interesting in terms of publishing academic papers openly, also having, being able to fund research in a way that does not necessarily involve institutions. And I say this because, for instance, there were recent spending cuts in the NIH, which has obviously had really terrible consequences for researchers in, I guess, less popular areas of funding, for instance, women's health, which is something which is quite close to heart. So I would really like to see projects that are building something similar to this, where you can basically, as a scientist, find it really easily. You can upload your research paper and you can apply for funding. And it would be, say, like a Kickstarter type of program. You could, put in your idea. You could talk about what exactly you want to research, why you should fund me, and then just put it out there. And like with Kickstarter, it really depends on how well you market it. And so the marketing is up to you. And, you engage a community, you engage potential funders, but it really doesn't matter. It would be all centralized on one platform, and it really doesn't matter where the funding sources are coming. So who it's coming from, it's all kind of centralized on this specific platform. And so funders would receive a token or an NFT, proof of philanthropy, and then the research results would be shared with the backers. So that's kind of one thing which I think would be super effective. There's currently maybe, one established player, maybe a couple of others that are less well known, but I think there's, a really big opportunity there. And I think anybody who, has worked on applying for grant funding will probably also be able to relate that it's just difficult. So I think crypto is a really elegant mechanism there in order to make capital allocation, raising small amounts of funding easier. I also spoke about AI-enabled asynchronous drug discovery and financing. So I think what LabDAO is doing with Plex is very interesting there. And I can also drop a link in the chat if any of you are curious. I think it's app.labdao. I can share it later. I can't find the link. But yeah, I guess just like a Google search for LabDAO and Plex. Scientific and medical identity verification to establish credibility is another one. So human.tech or Silk are working on something like this. And again, so it's making the Web3, Web2, Web3 experience a lot more frictionless, but also just really verifying your proof of identity. So anybody who's dealt with Gitcoin Passport, for instance, it kind of looks through all the different identities that you have online and kind of puts together like a profile as to how kind of credible you would be in the instance, in the context of like the sciences, for instance. And also DeFi access to working capital. So I think, whereas DeSci currently has really focused on funding early stage research, I think there's a lot of opportunity to basically bring this into already established companies. So for instance, companies going through phase 1 clinical trials, a lot of them, need funding as a stopgap between institutional raises. And actually this lack of funding can lead to why a lot of these companies just fail. And I think, having crypto as a more, I'd say, better supported means of funding, especially by the current administration in the US, actually would be super effective to bring to companies and could also just enable us to have more shots on goal. So not as like a replacement for institutional finance, but rather a accompaniment to institutional financing, I think would also mean that we're getting a lot more therapeutics coming to market, and just seeing a lot more progress just because there's better access to capital and liquidity. In terms of infrastructure, so I think World Coin for Health data is interesting, as well as cross-jurisdictional patient data management. Remedy is really interesting here. I also really like what HealthBlocks is doing, so HealthBlocks AI, as well as tamper-proof data collection. So some of you may be familiar with DeSci Mike or DeSci London. So the founders of both are working on a project called Causality. And what that does is it so it encrypts data on chain in real time from experiments, which means that it's basically tamper-proof. And data falsification in the sciences has been a real, a really critical thing. And so I really like the fact that they're kind of looking at the problem and tackling it head on. So this is an example of AI synchronous drug discovery, and the project specifically is called Genesis L1. It's super cool, and if there are any comp bio or drug design, drug design people that are listening, I'd be really interested to chat and see if you have any ideas as to how this could work. I would see it being a combination of AI enabled drug discovery, possibly DAOs, so like a decentralized collective of inventors, and also being able to store these as NFTs on, say, a platform, and then be able to tokenize them, raise funding, and I guess accelerate specific new molecular entities. I think that could be quite interesting. And then next is, so you may be familiar with pump.science, and I think this was a really cool way of raising funds and also just getting people excited over longevity specifically. So rapamycin, urolithin A are two key compounds in longevity that have been linked to longevity, and they raised a lot of funding here in order to conduct studies. I think they're also doing a mouse trial or a fly trial with Tract Bio. So you can also check this out. It's all available online on X. But we'd also love to see something like this go live on, say, like a launch pad for so specific molecules that may be OTC but need research in a specific area, and raising funding for that, conducting, say, an observational clinical trial. I think that's also super interesting. In terms of observational clinical trials, there's already one that's underway with Perceptor. That's done by Cerebrum DAO. And so I'd love to see more of this going on. I think it's really cool. So next up is healthcare and consumer tech. I think the quantified self is super interesting, and basically being able to have like reward systems, for instance, for contributing data to a specific health protocol, or I think also be able to conduct research studies on lesser funded, more overlooked areas. For instance, I think elderly care and quality of care in elderly care homes is one which is super interesting. And I guess this is more a little bit, decentralized patient care tracking, maybe a little less crypto orientated, but if you can kind of improve the standard of preventative care in a way that is, I guess, more positive sum, where you kind of see more of an upside. For instance, airline loyalty program type rewards, which is enabled by tokens, which you can then kind of off ramp in USDC, could be super interesting. I know that Health Blocks is working on something very similar to this. In fact, they also went live very recently, so definitely encourage checking them out. Wearables integration as well. So, kind of bringing this into the quantified self kind of thing. On-chain AI health twins with AI-enabled concierge plugins. So one project which I think is really cool is drpepe.ai. So they're quite recent, and they're also featured at Brian Johnson's Don't Die Summit. And so what it is it's a meme coin in the front, and then it's a longevity health protocol in the back. And then the token is kind of woven into the design of the user journey and how you basically use it. And I think it's a really smart way of creating kind of gamified, fun longevity health protocol that also has, a bit more of a serious element to it as well. And lastly on the slide is athletics and entertainment. So I guess this is a little bit more inside the crypto bubble, but I think also, having community funded activities and leagues like a fantasy football on chain would be super cool. A little bit more gamified as well. I think that's super cool. And I think also a Farcaster for science would be another interesting application that falls under this. So, for instance, like a blue sky, or specifically for science research in, I know it could be like a communications platform, or just like a social platform for academics, researchers, etc. That is just kind of more community owned versus centralized. And so, here we go. Here is a example of Brian Johnson's Don't Die NFT passports. I think having something similar to this on Say would be super cool. So one idea I think would be maybe health tracking or running tracking, or sports leagues having maybe badges, ownership, making it gamified, making it fun is quite cool. And then lastly is climatology and bioengineering. This kind of feeds into the deep end part, and I think it could be really interesting to see the likes of, say, environmental data aggregation across a larger, more decentralized network with more distributed nodes. I think also supply chain auditing for sensitive data is very important. So, for instance, the way in which clinical trial data is managed, who uses it, who accesses it, is super key. I think also, it's very specific to use cases, but this could also be something, as well as access to control to prevent misuse of, sensitive information, synthetic organisms, etc. So let me just show a couple of examples as well. Nebular genomics is a really interesting one. And I'd also like to see this applied. So blockchain technology applied in similar instances. Also very open to ideas, and this is just kind of inspiration as to where you might take this tech. And I also really like what Ambios is doing as well. They used to be called Ambient Network. They recently rebranded to Ambios. But this kind of feeds into the environmental data aggregation and also being able to basically just do more with it. And so maybe this could be applied to, say, indoor air pollution, and also being able to look into, so basically be incentivized to provide data on maybe disease outbreaks. So imagine a future where you have an app on your phone and then you report, say, somebody feeling ill or somebody feeling unwell, and then benefiting from this kind of crowd reporting intelligence and being able to actually pinpoint, say, where cluster disease outbreaks are, and then being able to kind of share the news more broadly and be able to stop, say, future pandemics from happening. I mean, imagine if, say, we had this type of technology in COVID, and users were incentivized to report an outbreak in a clustered area. You'd be able to get the information in real time. Governments would be able to put out reports, warnings, etc. And that could also, we're talking about saving lives potentially. I think that could be a really a really killer use case of this type of tech in DeSci. And so lastly, how to get started? Well, you've probably seen this before. You probably, had all of this covered already during the hackathon, but start building on SAY by accessing this link. If for those of you who saw Owen and Alex's presentation, they did a bit more of a longer walkthrough, and I think also the recording is available on YouTube, so you can track that. You can also apply for funding on sapienfund.xyz, or you can also reach out to me. So my Twitter handle or X handle is at Gwei_Shah. Gwei is in the gas fees, and Shah is in Shah256. And you can also join the community. There are also a number of separate initiatives as well, and I think this also really builds into the network effect that you'd have when building on SAY. So, for instance, we recently announced that we're looking into the acquisition of 23andMe, and really, this is a very genuine and very serious bid, and I think it also just establishes the legitimacy that we're providing for ourselves. There's also the Crypto in America podcast. So guests are, for instance, SEC commissioners. So it's run by Gerald RGC, as well as Eleanor Terrett and Jacqueline Manek. And so we had some pretty high profile guests as well. There's currently a request for applications on the SAY Labs side. That's led by Cody and Incubations, who I believe is also doing a session. And there's also the Builder Fund. So you can, aside from the, actually, let me just get that up. Aside from the Sapient funding, you can also apply for further funding on this link as well. And so I'm curious as to what you'll biddle. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining this workshop. I hope that this information was useful and accessible. And again, very curious to see how this is then implemented. I think this is, it's the role of you, the builders, to define what this ecosystem will look like. There's, this funding that's available. There's also, incredibly performant chain that is very well equipped to become the de facto DeSci chain. And I'm also very happy to chat about, what this could look like. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I'll open up the floor for questions now.
Right, that was awesome. So guys, anybody has questions for Eleanor, make sure you just drop them into the chat. We'll give you a few minutes there. I don't think I've seen anything so far. But that was a killer presentation. I will say that. Yeah.
I hope it hasn't been drinking from a fire hose, but
I mean, you have to be. And DeSci is still one of the lesser saturated areas of crypto, but let's call it for what it is. So to Eleanor's point, if you are building, consider building something around a DeSci project.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't look like there's any questions in the chat. So for those of you that are still with us, we will be recording and posting the links back online. You will get a copy of the slides in the Hackathon Telegram channel, and all of this is available on YouTube and Twitter, whatever you want it. So with that, thank you, Eleanor. That was awesome.
Thank you very much.
We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day.